And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
If you cannot speak and talk about the history of who they are, then they will not really carry your story. They will not understand their story. So today, the first thing I was the greatest revelation I was telling you a while back, is that most people trying to reach, and I'm going to specifically talk today, and next week will be Spanish, the following week the Asian, etc. But I'm going to talk specifically today about the black culture. And I wanted to right now, I know, and how many would agree that I am not black? Can I get a witness, everybody? Amen. Praise God. Praise God. Pretty white to me. Can I get an amen up in here? Yeah. Praise God. Amen. So here's the deal. But what I want to share with you is I want to talk to you about is that, you know, we went across the country and we found out there's certain things that help reach that culture and reach it effectively. And there's certain things that don't make it happen. Okay. And today I would like to talk about those things that do reach the culture, specifically the men of the culture. And the first thing I found out is this. I found out that they do not know their history. That's one of the things that I know. And so you have to tell them their history. So today I'm going to attempt to do that. He's now positioned in a position of power and authority. He is given within him a belt. On one side is justice, and the other is blessing. He now is given the Constitution of God as a king. I give this to you, Bishop, as a sign of covenant, as a sign of release, as my sign of love for you. Amen. My brothers will come forth. 4 sons representing the 4 corners of the earth. They'll raise him up right now. He now is raised up from a commoner to a kingship. Come on, raise it up. And I'll walk him around. Come on! Come on, praise God.
Want to say peace and blessings, family. Wanted to say shalom lak mash paka to everyone that is watching this tonight. And tonight, this is an extended teaching on what I taught a few days ago in regards to, as you see in the title, I don't believe in God, and I will never call myself a Christian. Don't call me a Christian. I'm going to explain why. I'm going to go geek mode here in this presentation. I'm going to extend this lesson, part one, more. And then when we get to part two, you'll be ready for it. So I want to make this clear. This lesson is not about trying to throw shots at anyone. This is a lesson. This is what I've been teaching for years. I used to call myself a Christian. And even as I transitioned from our ministry over to the truth per se, initially I referred to myself as an Israelite, a pastor who is a Christian. But I ceased years ago. And I'm going to explain why. I'm going to give you proper clarity on what it means to be a Christian. So I want to be clear. This lesson is not to throw shots at anyone, because unfortunately, many will take things and run with it and take it and start instigating things. When you look at King Saul and actually at the time he was not a king. When you look at David and King Saul, the issue started with the people, not King Saul. The issue started with the people, not King Saul. When you read the text, you will see the people began to sing songs. This is supposed to be a celebration for the king, as they had gotten victory, even though David accomplished so much as being an armor bearer to the king, but also being a soldier in the army. But he fell under the authority of the king. So as Israel was coming into the soldiers coming back from war and celebrating their victory, this was supposed to be a time to celebrate the king who was out there as well. But what happened? The women, the people, began to sing songs honoring the king, said, hey, Saul killed his thousands. But others chimed in and responded by saying, David killed his 10,000s. And when you read the holy text, that's when Saul's countenance, that's when Saul's spirit changed towards David. So, family, be careful of the instigators. I want to make this clear. I'm not part of a group. I'm not part of a crew. Because that's, I used to do that when I was young, when I used to be into breakdancing and pop locking, when we used to call ourselves actually my older cousins called themselves the Papatronics. And being that me and my friends were their little brothers, right? We called ourselves the Babytronics. And I used to pop lock and all those things. So we had our different crews. So I'm not about supporting crews. I'm all about, of course, the truth through the Most High, from the Most High, his Son, as well as the Holy Spirit. And I am all about teaching salvation, starting with Israel and all those that have a desire to seek truth that may not be blood descendants of Israel. So in spite some of the things that many may disagree with as far as my teachings, this is not directed at any person. So I want to make sure you guys understand that. So I don't have to come up here and try to give names and who I'm rolling with. No, you guys know. You guys know who I'm connected with. I'm connected with the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. And guess what? All of you, Israel, We're connected regardless. We're going to have our disagreements, absolutely. We're family. And this is the time that even if we want to start with the remnant, we have to hold it down. So I can name names of, my family, as far as Pastor Majors, Benaiah Israel, he is my cousin. Pastor Jerry Carr. I can name Moray Morris, Moray Joshua, who we put in a lot of work before some of you guys even come to understanding who we are. We've been doing this for a long time, for quite some time. Before I started doing the YouTube thing. So I want to make it clear. Yeah, I done had rabbis. I done had, what's that guy, Kevin Wesley and others that have backed down from a discussion. So again, I want to make this clear. It's not about trying to be part of crews and give names, because unfortunately, this is what it's become to some people. And I'm going to show you, reveal to you in this lesson, expose some of the foolishness that our people have been subjected to and endorse because of the lack of understanding. That's why I played the clip of Rabbi Messi or Messer, who says that he's targeting our community, saying that we don't know our history. So they have to tell us our history. Every last one of us should be insulted, but that is the playbook. They have to tell us our history in order to what? Catch your attention. And many are using that playbook. They will use identity, they will use history just to catch your attention. So I'm going to teach history. I teach history. I teach a number of different things. But I know where my lane is. I'm a pastor. The Most High has allowed me and appointed me to shepherd his people. Someone used the term under shepherd. The people that he made me responsible for. The people don't belong to me. So I have a ministry with a street address. This is why I'm not ashamed to put my information out there. So I want to make that clear. I want to make sure we understand that. I have been up and down this East Coast along with Moray Brown, which is my cousin. We done been up and down this East Coast teaching this truth. Money out of our pocket, paying for everything. Just up, driving on the road, flying, whatever it takes to teach this word. I give all respect to a number of people that's in this walk, though I may not agree with them in everything. See, I teach about DNA, but guess what? I know that Ron Dalton is a specialist with DNA. I been teaching about the Spanish Inquisition, but I know Benaiah Israel, my cousin, he got it locked down. I know that Pastor Majors, Moray Brown, I know he has it locked down with properly teaching and giving you clarity about the Kemet community. But guess what? He has that locked down. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I know what the Most High has called me to do. I know what Hebrew Nation, Moray Morris and Josh, I know what they are called to do. And others in this walk. Dante, Teo Ministry, Sister E, all those guys. But guess what? I understand what the Most High has called me to do in the place he wants me to be. So I don't have to sit up here and give shots or throw sneak disses and all that other stuff. Because I know what the Most High has called me to do. But unfortunately, on my end, I've pulled back on a lot of my teachings because of being connected to so many people and not wanting to put teachings out there that may give the impression that I am having a conflict with someone else. So I purposely started pulling back on my teachings that I've been teaching for years. Also give respect to Pastor Darby with Negro Land. But guess what? I've been teaching about Negro Land well before I came to understanding or coming across Pastor Darby's videos. I did not come to the truth through Pastor Darby and some of the other people out there. But I give my highest respect to Pastor Darby because of the impact and him understanding the lane that the Most High placed him in. There's others out there, Omar Thibodeau. There's others that are out there. So I know the lane that the Most High has placed me in. So I want to say this to you, family. This is going to be an in-depth lesson. I know I normally go through the shout outs, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that tonight. So family, you may have to go back over and watch this lesson because I'm going to share a lot of information. I'm going to share even more than what I shared initially. So again, family, and for those, if I did not mention your name, do not take it as if I'm speaking against you or I don't respect what you bring to the table. There's so many people that's bringing so much stuff to the table, only love, doing so much work. My sister Carol, Jay High Styles, doing so much work. Ron Shields. So many that are doing work. But I have to be careful on what I do because I have an assembly. This is just not an online ministry that you see here. The Most High has put me over an assembly. Almost 14 years, which we transitioned out of Christianity to what many would just say, hey, the truth, the awakening. So family, I want to make this clear. Please don't take this out of context. Don't take this out of context. So you hear it from my mouth. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's get started. I want to start off by saying, again, I don't believe in God. Let me say that again. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in God. Don't call me a Christian. Let me say that again. Don't call me a Christian. Others, if you choose to go by this term, that's fine. I'm not mad at you. But as for me and my house, as for me and the assembly that the Most High has blessed me to lead, we are going to teach the truth, nothing but the truth. We honor the law, statutes, and commandments and the proper application. So again, don't call me a Christian, but call me a follower, Yalak, of the way, Hadarak. Call me a follower, but don't call me a Christian. So does this make me a heretic? Does this make me a heretic? Does this make me a heretic by saying that don't call me a Christian?
What?
Does this make me a heretic when I say I don't believe in God?
What?
I'm going to say absolutely not. And we're going to give a 3-piece for anyone that teach this nonsense. And we're going to toss it out. So does this make me a heretic? Does this make me a heretic? Am I promoting heresy? Because if you leave it up to these so-called defenders that's within the institution of Christianity, based on their warped and poor understanding of what heresy means, what a heretic means, guess what? Even the Messiah would be considered a heretic. Even the disciples would be considered a heretic. Even Apostle Paul, right? Because Apostle Paul is like who they default to. They lean more on Apostle Paul than the actual holy text that Apostle Paul actually leaned on. Apostle Paul did not lean on what we have today called the New Testament or the renewed covenant, the testimonies of the disciples, even though he had that among them. But guess what? Paul, anyway, I'm not going to let the cat out the bag. I'll address it when I get there. But I can say for sure, I can say with confidence, they didn't have what we call the New Testament at that time. All right. So am I promoting heresy? Let's start with giving proper clarity of what a heretic is. Let me say that again. Let me give you proper clarity of what a heretic is. All right. This is coming from the Etymology dictionary, right, of what a heretic is, right? And for those that are not familiar with an etymology dictionary, I've been pushing this for years on top of years, that you need to add an etymology dictionary to your books, right? To your library. Now, this is the online library, right? Dictionary, etymology dictionary. But I have a few physical copies that's here. It's good to be able to flip through pages. But you will see a difference between what's on this online here, which is a good online dictionary, etymology dictionary, but you'll see a difference between the online versus a physical copy, starting with the word Jew. And I can name a few other words that you will see a difference in, subtle differences or subtle inserts. All right. So heretic, one who holds a doctrine at variance with established or dominant standards of or belonging to heresy. Also, we see a heretic, able to choose. But this is, you see this last line here? See this next paragraph? This is what I want you guys to really grab hold of. I really want you to understand this portion of the text, this portion of the definition. It says the heretic is not an unbeliever. Wait a minute. Let me say that again. A heretic is not an unbeliever.
What?
That's right. The heretic is not an unbeliever. Far from it.
What?
But rather a man And when it has man here, it's not just referring to the masculine gender, right? Men and women, but rather a man or a woman who emphasizes some point of doctrine too strongly and obsessively. Perfect example when we get to Acts chapter 15, when Paul and Barnabas had to go to Jerusalem and meet with James and the rest of the disciples, Peter, and they had to bring their cause, the issues that they were having from a particular group of believers, Pharisees who believed in the Messiah, but they were teaching circumcision. They were stating that if you are not circumcised, that you cannot have salvation. You cannot have the Messiah. You cannot receive the Messiah if you are not circumcised. But guess what? This is an example that they were believers. They were not unbelievers, far from it. But they put the point of emphasis on circumcision so strongly and obsessively. See, if you leave it up to how things are defined now, even the term Judaizer, right? This is what comes out of the mouths of many of these people that call themselves defenders of the holy text. If we put things in this proper perspective, when we understand what heresy is, as you see here, heretic, it says the heretic is not an unbeliever, far from it, but rather a man who emphasizes some point of doctrine too strongly and obsessively. See, we could stay within the confines of the church, Christianity, because there's over 40,000 denominations there. This is how you could really say this about the Baptists, the Methodists, Church of God in Christ, Assemblies of God, the Calvinists. You could go right down the list. The Mormons, you could go right down the list of all those that have placed points of emphasis on things. Now, actually, I had to take the Mormons out of it, right? Because the Mormons are, that's a whole nother doctrine, just like the Jehovah's Witnesses. That's a whole nother set of doctrines there. But when we look at Christianity and we look at the number of denominations, the different theologies that's circulating among them, guess what? Each group is practicing or can be considered a heretic, right? Because what? Again, the heretic is not an unbeliever. Man, you had the Baptist church going at the Holiness Church, right? Or going at anything that resembled Pentecostal. The Presbyterians, we could go right down the list. But the heretic is not an unbeliever, far from it, but rather a man who emphasizes some point of doctrine too strongly and obsessively. Guess what? If all your teachings is about, let's just say, identity, guess what? You can be considered a heretic. If all you teach about is, let's just say, end time prophecy, technically, according to here, you can be considered a heretic. If all you want to talk about is the language, you can be technically considered a heretic. So again, based off of this definition, the heretic is not an unbeliever, far from it, but rather a man who emphasizes some point of doctrine too strongly and obsessively. So make a note of this definition, family. So again, the heretic is not an unbeliever, far from it, but rather a man who emphasizes some point of doctrine too strongly and obsessively. Which leads us to the word heresy. What does it mean? What is heresy? Let's go to the Etymology Dictionary definition of this word. Heresy, doctrine or opinion at variance with established standards. But I want you to pay attention to this portion of the definition. An opinion of private men different from that of Catholic and Orthodox. I can tell you with absolute confidence that the Messiah was not Catholic. The Messiah was not part of the church. He never said anything. He never even made mention of the word church, because the word church is a 4th century word that actually not even a 4th century word. That is a word that began to be used in the 4th century by the Roman Catholic / the Christian church. They started using this term, but that term originated with the Celts, because church, circle, right? They called their place of worship this because their place of worship was a circle, shaped as a circle. For example, Stonehenge. That is actually the first church, right? The Messiah never mentioned that word. Now, in the Greek, you'll see ecclesia, right? Which means called out people, called out assembly. And when you get the in-depth definition of it, it says called out assembly Israel, because in that text, the Messiah is not giving a generalized statement. Hebrew and Greek does not have any indefinite articles, right? So in that text, when you see the word ecclesia, right? Or ecclesia, however you want to pronounce it, right? The Messiah, if you want to get the proper context of that, go to Exodus chapter 12, verse 6, and you will see where it says the entire or the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel. But if you put it in its proper perspective from a Hebraic school of thought, it will say ha, kal, quahal, ha, idath, yashara'al. The proper translation would be the whole assembly of witnesses, the Israelites. So the Messiah never used the term church. That is part of the doctrines that the Roman Catholic teach, that Peter was the first pope. So guess what? The Messiah didn't teach that. The disciples nor Peter himself taught that. So technically, based upon this definition here, the Messiah is a heretic. He's operating in heresy. Because notice what it says here: doctrine or opinion at variance with established standards, an opinion of private men different from that of Catholic, universal, universe, the doctrines of uni, right? Their tenets. Number 1 is the Trinity, which the Messiah never spoke on the Trinity. The disciples never pushed the Trinity. And the beloved Apostle Paul, and I'm not saying this as sarcasm or anything, the beloved, because this is what the church used. They use his teachings way out of context. And many within the Hebrew Israelite community use his teachings out of context, whether it's for dismissing him or placing still the what was taught through the church on Paul's letters. They are what it is. They are letters. What we read in Paul's letters are one-sided conversation, because we don't see the back and forth, the letters that he received. Paul's letters were written to leaders. That's why many people can't understand it, because Paul's letters are written to leaders, and most are not leaders. And then the leaders were supposed to what? Take the correction and make the change among their assembly. But anyway, but notice again, doctrine or opinion at variance with established standards, an opinion of private men different from the Catholic and Orthodox Church. School of thought.
philosophical sect, a taking or choosing for oneself, a choice, a means of taking, take, seize, to choose. So again, the meaning, unorthodox religious sect or doctrine. I want to hone in on this portion of the definition of it, of heresy, so you can get a proper clarity of it. Unorthodox religious sect or doctrine. When it says unorthodox, you have orthodox. That's the majority, what most people believe or operate in a certain way. But then you have the unorthodox. In other words, the few that may, the smaller groups that may not fall in alignment with the larger groups. So unorthodox religious sect or doctrine. And when you really understand this, now we start really understanding what the Council of Nicaea was called into play, the Council in 320 AD. It was all about heresy, not dealing with heresy, but Gnosticism. It was dealing with Athanasius, who was represented as we say, the Orthodox, the majority. Arius represented the minority. Arius was teaching and pushing Gnosticism. In other words, the whole argument was not about creating the Messiah or canonizing the books. It was all about how did they recognize the Messiah. The unorthodox, the Gnostics, taught that the Messiah did not become divine until after he was raised from the dead. While we have the Orthodox, and we see it right within the holy text, that the Messiah was born this way. He was always that way. So that was the fight between Arius and Athanasius. The battle of when did the Messiah be considered to be divine? All right, so that's giving you an example of orthodox and unorthodox. So the Greek definition of heresy, let's deal with this here. It says a choice, an example, a party or special party or disunion. But I also highlight here the fourth entry here, where it says a body of men following their own tenets. But notice what it says here, sect or party. But let's put this in its proper perspective. Let's go to the scriptures and let's see that word used to one of the people that many talk about, especially within the church. Let's go to it. Let's go to it. Let's go to the text. So again, an opinion, heresy, an opinion of private men different from that of the Catholic and Orthodox Church. So again, let's deal with Apostle Paul now. This is the person I'm going to highlight. Apostle Paul was accused by the Israelites who did not follow the Messiah of heresy. Let me say that again. Apostle Paul was accused by Israelites, not the church, not the non-blood descendants of Israel, but by the Israelites themselves who did not follow the Messiah, right? They accused him of heresy. So let's go to Acts chapter 24, verse 13 and 14. Let's put this in its proper perspective. Neither can they prove the things whereof they now accuse me, but this I confess unto thee, that after the way, now I put that in caps so you can understand, but this I confess unto thee, that after the way, ha-darak, which they call heresy. And notice I put sect in the parentheses so that way you understand and put this in the proper context. So worship I Elohim of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. See, just this right here will shut down anyone, whether you are in the church or outside the church, that incorrectly teach that Paul, the Apostle Paul, did not teach and stand and believe in the law, statutes, and commandments. See, we see right here, this is Paul right here, but this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy. In other words, a sect, a group. So worship I Elohim of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. What does it say here? Believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. They didn't have a New Testament portion of the book back then. Paul taught from the law, which is the first 5 books of the Holy Text, which some will categorize it as the laws of Moses, or the Pentateuch, or the laws of the Most High, and the prophets. That's what Paul taught from. That's what the disciples taught from. That's what the Messiah taught from. That's what all of Israel was teaching from. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, in other words, a sect. So Paul is saying, I believe in what you guys believe. I believe in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. I mean, the Father, but here, they didn't believe in the Son. They believed in the Father. They believed in the Holy Spirit. He said, I believe all things, following the holy feast days and all those things, which are written in what? The law and in the prophets. He also believed in the prophecies of the Messiah. But here he highlights the way. Why? Because there was a specific group of Israelites that believed in the way. So going back to that word heresy or heretic, guess what? Heretic means that, guess what? That they are what? Believers. Paul is saying, I am a believer. But the reason why you're calling me a heretic or operating in heresy, because they think that he's being extreme, just like the rest of the disciples and others, and following the Messiah. Let's break this down. So worship I the Elohim of my fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's who is the fathers, the forefathers, right? Believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. Let me say that again. So, and this is the words of Paul. So worship I the Elohim of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. Now, you know, guys, we got to give a 3-piece for those that are teaching contrary. We got to toss out a lot of false and deceptive doctrine that's being taught to the people that really want to believe. Let's toss it out. Yeah, we're handing out a lot of carryouts here. We're going to give out a lot of 3-pieces tonight, family. All right. So worship I the Elohim of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. So Paul taught about the Messiah, right? From all things which are written in the law and in the prophets, right? Let me give you clarity here, right? This is Acts chapter 28, verse 23, right? This is dealing with Apostle Paul here. Let me read it to you. And when they had appointed him a day, there came many to him into his lodging, to whom he expounded and testified the kingdom of Yahweh, persuading them concerning Yahweh Shai, both out of the law of Moses and out of the prophets, from morning till evening. So here it is all day. Apostle Paul is using the law of Moses, or the law, or should we say the law or the law of Moses, because it's used in different ways. The law of Moses, or the law, right? The law of the Most High. But you see here, he makes it clear. He taught out of the law of Moses and out of the prophets, persuading and showing who Yahweh Shai HaMashiach is. He taught out of these. He said he believed all things Believe all things that are in the law and the prophets. You cannot teach the Messiah if you're teaching against the law and the prophets. You can't. You can't. You're teaching another Messiah. That's a fact. That is a fact. Anyone that's teaching against the law and the prophets, teaching against the commandments, I can prove just with the scriptures that they are teaching another Messiah. All right. So the Messiah, he taught all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. Let's go here. Matthew chapter 22, verse 36 through 40. Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Yahushua said it to them, thou shalt love Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Now, to put this in proper context, because if you ask the average Christian, the average person in the church, average Catholic, when you ask them about this text right here, they'll say this is the laws of Christ, as if the Messiah gave something new. But the actual proper context of this conversation here that the Messiah is having with the Pharisees and having with the scribes, guess what? One of the scribes, right, who was astute in the law, decided to ask him this question. The question was, Master, if we put it in the proper context, which is the great commandment? In other words, what is the greatest of all the commandments, as you see here in the law? They're asking a question. They're discussing the law. What is the great, out of all the laws, what is the great commandment? They're not asking him to create a new commandment. So they asked him, what is the great commandment? What is the greatest out of all the commandments? And Yahushua said it to them, until this individual, thou shalt love Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Verse 38, this is the first and great commandment. But he didn't stop right there. He said, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Verse 40, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. He's saying the law and the prophets is going to teach two primary principles: to love the Most High first, and what? Second, love one another. When you really want to understand, just starting with the 10 commandments, you will see the 10 commandments will teach these key principles. Does not deviate from what the Messiah has said. But notice he's teaching, he's giving what? Out of all the laws, he's focusing on two of those commandments that are listed in what? The law and the prophets. So he's still teaching out of the law and the prophets. He's not pulling up John. He's not pulling up the writings of Mark or Matthews or Luke. He's not pulling up the historical writings of Luke when it comes to the works, right, of the book of Acts. He's not pulling up the Apostle Paul's letters. He's going right here and making reference to the law and the prophets, the commandments that are listed there. But we're not going to stop here, guys. I'm going geek mode. Are these new commandments? No. Let's go to, again, let's confirm this. This is incorrect here, but let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5, so you can put it in its proper context. Let's go there. This is still part of what? The law. Hear, O Israel. You know, many of you guys sing this song. Shemai, Yisrael, Yahuwah, Eloheinu, Yahuwah, Echad, right? Akkad is actually the ancient pronunciation of it, and it's what? It means one. So here, Shemai, O Israel, Yahweh, our Elohim is one. Akkad is one. Yahweh, Akkad. But then that song, right? Once you go to the next stanza, because verse 5 should be the next stanza to this song. And thou shalt love Yahweh, thy Elohim, with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. There it is right there. This is what the Messiah is quoting from. So he did not give a new law, right? Actually, this is where he's quoting from. And to get proper clarity of what the Messiah said, go to this chapter. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 6. Let's go to the next, right? Let's go to the next one. This is Leviticus. Excuse the typos in the slides, but nevertheless, this is Leviticus chapter 19, verse 16 through 18. Thou shalt not go up and down as a tail breaker, rakayal, right? Rakayal, right? Tail breaker. In other words, going around promoting slander, right? We see a lot of that going on, promoting slander, pushing slander, all up in people's business. Thou shalt not go up and down as a tail breaker, right? You see rakayal, or you could say rakal, right? Rakayal, right? This is someone that is what? Pushing slander, pushing lies, pushing all kinds of things. If we understood this right here, this will eliminate so much of the foolishness that we see from those that say that they believe and teach the law, statutes, and commandments. But let's read the rest of it. Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among the people, a gossiper, someone that got to tell it all, somebody that just got to open their mouth, always running off their mouth. And social media is promoting this right here. Talebearers among thy people, neither shall thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am Yahweh. Neighbor, those that are in what? You're within your tribe, and those that are what? In the opposite tribes of you. I am Yahweh. Verse 17, thou shalt not hate Shana. In other words, look at your brothers and sisters as what? An enemy, as the adversary. When you look up the definition of Shana, you also have Shatam that transliterates to the word hate. And that's a whole nother definition, but that word shatam transliterates to the word Satan. But here, shana means adversary. Thou shalt not hate. In other words, view your brother or sister as an adversary in thine heart. Labab. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him. Cause your brother to sin, putting out stumbling blocks and causing your brother to err. That's what the Messiah pointed out as well. Woe to those that are what? Putting stumbling blocks before the people. Verse 18, thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people. But thou shalt love Ahab, thy neighbor, as thyself. I am Yahweh. It's right here. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 16 through 18. So this is what the Messiah was teaching. Now, is this new? Is this new? I'm showing you right here that the Messiah did not teach or create any new commandments. He highlighted 2 commandments that's listed in all the laws, 2 laws. He pointed out that these are what? The great among them. That all the other laws, the law and the prophets, all these laws and statutes is going to teach 2 key principles. So honoring the Shabbat, newsflash, guess what? For those that want to do the things that pleases the Most High, as highlighted, I believe, in Isaiah chapter either 53 or 56, right? When he deals with the son of the eunuchs, the sons and daughters of the eunuchs and sons and daughters of strangers. It says for them to honor the Shabbat and take hold. In other words, receive his covenant. Do the things that pleases him. So guess what? Just you not honoring the Shabbat, guess what? You're not doing the things that pleases him. For those that don't believe your blood descendants of Israel, and even the blood descendants of Israel, you have to honor the Shabbat. You have to honor the Shabbat. And honoring the Shabbat wasn't just meant for all of us just to be by ourselves. I understand that there's certain situations that there's no assemblies near you, right? Those are within proximity of assemblies. Go and honor the Shabbat, corporate worship. But those that are not, that don't, guess what? Still set aside the time. Your jobs and all those different things that the Most High has blessed you with. He didn't bless you with those things so that way you will have more faith in and more fear in the things that he blessed you with versus the one that actually is doing the blessing. Many have allowed the creation to have more authority than the creator. So let's get back to this. Let's continue to deal with Paul here. See, Paul confessed to honoring the commandments of the Most High and following the way. Let's go to Acts chapter 9, verse 1 and 2. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Adonai. Adonai transliterates to Lord, right? Master, went unto the high priest. So Apostle Paul did not operate by himself. He was not this rebel or this, how can I put it, this messenger that was by himself, this mercenary. Apostle Paul had to get permission from the high priest. The high priest is the one that gave Paul the letter to carry out his ugliness towards his own people. But notice what it says here, against the disciples of Adonai. Disciples, those that are skilled, those that have the apt to learn, not just teach, but willing to learn, that has sat at the feet of the Messiah. So now he's breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of Adonai. Went unto the high priest. But here's verse 2 that really sums it up. And desired of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogues, in other words, the local places of worship, because you had the temple, but then you had local mashkans that our brothers and sisters worship at. See, this right here alone dispels when people think that, hey, you know what, there's no temple. The temple is torn down. No, if you understand how the Israelites were scattered among the promised land, the Levites were scattered among the promised land. They had local mashkans for the people to go and worship, because guess what? It wasn't just going to the temple for the 3 major feast days at that time that Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 16 highlights. But also they had local places that they went and worshiped. That's why the Most High said, guess what? If you can't bring your tithe to, guess what? If it's too much for you to go to the temple, he has other places that he's designated for you to bring it to. That's biblical. That's scripture. So, and he desired of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogues, that if he found any of what? This way. Now this is where we really get into the meat and potatoes right here. That if he found any of what? This way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. Guess what? They did not mention the word Christian right here. Apostle Paul is not looking for Christians. He's looking for what? Followers of this way, followers of the way. And the followers of the way, he's looking for other Israelites. He's not looking for converts. He's not looking for Roman converts, proselytes. He's looking for Israelites. Let me say that again, because, have to make this clear. We have to make this clear for those that call themselves in the Christian arena, call themselves being if we want to call it defenders. It's so easy to shut down any of the things that they try to say. They're not the gatekeepers. They're not the true apologists of what the definition of what it really means. The key is that if someone asks you a question, you should be able to give them an answer. That's as simple as you can get it. That's what the text is saying. Not going out here starting trouble. When did you see the Messiah standing in front of somebody's place of worship? Did he stand in front of the Roman temples? Did you see Apostle Paul go and stand in front of Aphrodite's temple? Did you see the disciples stand in front of other people, places of worship? No, they didn't. See, that's colonization. That's not evangelism. We got to clean this foolishness up. That's not teaching evangelism. That's being disrespectful. One thing I could say about the old school, like my father, he was a pimp. One thing I didn't meet him till I was like 13, 14 years old. But I remember when I rode with him in his convertible Cadillac. He had a convertible Cadillac. He was old school, an old school pimp, convertible Cadillac with white wall tires, have his music blasting. But guess what? Whenever he pulled in front, drove past a mosque, a Kingdom Hall, a Baptist church or whatever church, whenever he passed by any places of worship that he recognized, he turned his music down. If he drove past a funeral home, he turned his music down. So here we go, right? Apostle Paul is not looking for Christians. He's looking for followers of the way, of this way, followers of the way, Darak. So that way he could bring them to Jerusalem, the heart of Israel, the capital of Israel. So Saul was given over to a fierce objective, that of destroying all the followers of the way. So Paul, or at the time he was referred to as Saul, was sent to persecute Israelite followers of the way. So who is the way? Who is the way? Let's go to John chapter 14, verse 6. All right, let's go to John chapter 14, verse 6. All right, and let's see what we see here. Let's see what the Messiah says. He says here, right? It says, Yahushua saith unto him, I am the way, Ahaya ha Darak ha Aman, and the life, Chai. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Let me say that again. Yahushua said it to him, I am the way. So everyone knew him referring to himself as the way. Not as a Christian, not as a pushing Christianity or a Catholic, Roman Catholicism, not as a Lutheran or a Calvinist or a Mormon or a Baptist or a Presbyterian. No, he said, I am the follower. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Of course, everything that he did was under the instructions of the Most High. Remember, in John chapter 7, the Messiah makes it clear the doctrine, the things that he teaches, not his own. It's the things that the Most High has given him and is already laid out where? In the law and the prophets. Going right back to there. So Yahushua said unto him, I am the way, the truth, Aman, right? Truth. If you understand the word Aman, it also transliterates to faith. It means consistent. It means permanent. But here's the key to that definition. Go to the right hand. So I am the way. I am what? The right hand. Y'all better grab hold of this. Look up the word Aman. Don't just go off of what I say. Look up the word Aman. I am the way. I am the truth. I am confirmation. I am permanent. I am consistent. I am what? The right hand. Because Aman also means go to the right hand. So the Israelites already knew the importance of going to the right hand of the Father. And guess what? When Stephen was getting stoned with the young Saul standing there witnessing it, he looked up. He looked up to the heavens, or Shemayim, or some would say Shemayim. He looked up to the heavens, and guess what he saw? The Messiah standing, not sitting, standing at the right hand of the Father. Oh, come on now, man. I'm getting excited up here. You guys gonna have me bring out the organ here. So Yahushua said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man come unto the Father but by me. And this conversation, he's dealing with Philip. He also tells Philip, because Philip wanted to see the physical of the Most High, see him physically. And the Messiah had to say, me and the Father are one. Heis, right? Akkad, one together, right? Going back to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5 and 6, Shammai, Yisrael. So the Hebrew definition of the way, let's see what it means. Darak, a road, course of life, journey, manner, way, pathway, highway, wayside. So Paul never referred to himself and others as Christians. So what is a Christian? What is a Christian? What is a Christian? I know I'm giving a lot of information, but hey, remember, this is the extended teaching of what I taught a few days ago. What is a Christian? Let's go to the Etymology Dictionary definition of what it says about a Christian. It says here, right? So pay attention to the dates as well. This is important, right? Pay attention to the dates, because this gives you the progression of how the word evolved in terms of the meanings. Many cases start out one way, meaning one thing, to meaning another, or you'll see added definitions or meanings or added to the word, right? We see the evolution of the word. 1520s as a noun, a believer in and follower of Christ, right? We see in the 1550s adjective, when it started being referred to as professing the Christian religion, received into the Christian church. Could that be is when we start seeing the Reformation movement, right? That's around the time of the Reformation movement. Because prior to there, they were all part of Rome. They were all Roman Catholics. So don't get it twisted. Christianity is nothing more than the daughter of the Roman Catholic Church. So professing the Christian religion, received into the Christian church. It goes on to say, first used in Antioch, according to Acts chapter 11, verse 25 and 26. And we're going to address that. It also says, meaning having the manner and spiritual character proper to a follower of Christ. Then it goes on to say at the bottom here, Christian Science as the name of a religious sect is from 1863. So there was a group called Christian Science in 1863. So again, we're going to focus on here, a believer and follower of Christ, professing the Christian religion. So does the word Christian simply mean a believer in and follower of Christ or the Messiah, Hamashiach? Let's go to studies in Jewish Christian history, right? Studies in Jewish and Christian history. This is just a bullet out of it, and we're going to highlight a few other things. All the Greek terms formed with the Latin suffix "ianus," right? Or "ianus," yeah, I pronounce it right. Exactly as the Latin word of the same derivation, express the idea that the men or things referred to belong to the person to whose name the suffix is added. So what this is telling you is this word right here means that that person belong to anyone that has that suffix, whether it's let's just say Caesar, right? Because it gives the example right here, right? Caesarus, right? We see service, Caesarus, serve us. In other words, a slave of Caesar. So guess what? When you see Christ or Christian rather, that actually means a slave of the Messiah. See, the Israelite community would have never used that term to call one another Christians. Why? Because number one, guess what? They rejected the Messiah. So why would they use a term acknowledging the Messiah? Anyway, let me give you some additional information here. Christian actually means slave of Christ. Is this promoting chattel slavery? What is chattel slavery? Just real quick, this is coming from Debunking a Myth. The Irish were not slaves too. The link is below, but I'm just going to highlight something brief here to give you a proper understanding of slavery as far as indentured servitude versus chattel slavery. The legal differences between indentured servitude and chattel slavery were profound, according to Matthew Riley, an archaeologist who studies Barbados. Unlike slaves, servants were considered legally human. Let me say that again. Unlike slaves, servants, in other words, indentured servants, were considered legally human. And in Barbados, right, the indentured servants were criminals. They were Irish criminals. So unlike slaves, indentured servants were considered legally human. Their servitude was based on a contract that limited their services to a finite period of time, usually about 7 years, in exchange for passage to the colonies. They did not pass their unfree status on to descendants. But guess what? That wasn't the same for chattel slavery. Totally the opposite for chattel slavery. That's why they had breeding of slaves. When you look up the breeding that United States really pushed, because even the seeds were slaves, belonged to Massa. Contemporary accounts in Ireland sometimes refer to these people, in other words, indentured servants, as slaves. Mr. Hogan said that was not true in the sense that any form of coerced labor can be described as slavery, from ancient Rome to modern day human trafficking. But in colonial America and the Caribbean, the word slavery had a specific legal meaning, right? According to how they use slavery towards our people, right? It had a specific meaning, not the same towards their people, right? But towards our people, this is where you get the word chattel. It had a different meaning. Europeans, by definition, were not included in it. Let me say that again. Europeans, by definition, were not included in it. And indentured implies two people have entered into a contract with each other, but slavery is not a contract, says Leslie Harris. Let me make this clear, as it says here. Chattel slavery is not a contract. Let me say it again. Chattel slavery is not a contract. All right. So want to make sure you guys understand that, said Leslie Harris, a professor of African American history at Northwestern University. It is often about being a prisoner of war or being bought or sold bodily as part of a trade. That's a critical distinction. So here's the law against chattel slavery. This was shut down the Kemet community. This has shut down Sonetta and all those guys with the stuff that they try to push, polite and all those stuff, all those guys. I can shut those guys down when they try to push this nonsense that the Bible that was written by the white man. It was the Bible promotes chattel slavery. Hey, guess what? You had slavery inside the Egyptians, chattel slavery, and also you had indentured servitude. That's a fact. That's why I laugh at when I listen to these so-called deep discussions that they supposedly have. That's why I'm thankful that Kwame Brown did not go on his show, because they were trying to get Kwame Brown to come on Black News 102. I'm glad he didn't go on it. And I believe he didn't go on there because he knows the foolishness that they spew on that channel when it comes to our our Dabar HaQuadash. So the law against chattel slavery, this will shut down anyone that tried to say that the Bible, that our Dabar HaQuadash promotes chattel slavery. Here it is, Exodus chapter 21, verse 16. And if you read the entire chapter, starting at verse 1 to verse 15, you'll see indentured servitude, the laws of indentured servitude. But then this scripture shuts down chattel slavery. Here it is. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be bound in his hand. he shall surely be put to death. The Catholic Church, Christianity, Islam, all of them, and all these other religions, because guess what? Hinduism, guess what? They had slaves. We could go all the way around the world, all these different belief systems. They enslaved our people, but yet many of us are still trying to be connected to those things, still trying to push that doctrine of enslavement. He that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. In other words, guess what? There is an accountability that's going to come to all the people that enslaved our people. Christianity, the church, all of these people, Catholic Church, Hinduism, all of them has to give an account. Islam, Arabic, that's why it baffles me when we see people having councils, right, trying to come at us, right? You see it on Sinetta TV. You got the Muslims coming at us. You got the so-called Kemet community coming at us. You got them even connecting with the UA community. All these people coming at who? Our community. The very systems that have enslaved our people, chattel slavery, Islam, all these different places. That's why I laugh. That's why, I'm not dealing with that foolishness. But this right here says, and he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. There is an accountability, family. There is accountability. The Most High is going to collect. He's coming back to give judgment to all that enslaved our people. The Most High that we serve is merciful. Our law, statutes, and commandments made a distinction between us and the other nations. Chattel slavery was forbidden among our community. Let me read it again. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be bound in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. Christianity, Catholicism, Catholics and Christians and Jews and Islam, right? Muslims, all of them had our people as slaves. And I will not bow down. I will not compromise. I will not be part of any council that's coming together that have enslaved our people. I'm not dealing with none of those people or anyone that's in those belief systems. If you want to talk about coming out of it, we can have a discussion on that. But I'm not having a discussion on trying to prove who I am to anyone. Family, this is the word. But let me give you a little nugget here, because this is going to be included in part 2 of The Road to Savannah. Let's look at the Hebrew definition of the word steal, right? Ganab. Notice what it says: to thieve, to deceive. But notice here, steal as in steal away, get by stealth. Wait a minute. So our ancestors were singing steal away, steal away, steal away to Jesus. Right? That actual song is of Still Away is saying, put us right back on the ship, that good ship, Jesus, the Jesus of Luxembourg, put us right back on that same ship that you kidnapped us on. Still Away. Is it a coincidence that that popular slave song actually comes from the Hebrew word ganab? Come on, families. So many nuggets here. Again, it's easy to shut down the foolishness. But let's go back here. Studies in Jewish and Christian history, Elias Joseph Beckerman. Let's go to page 294. Let's continue to deal with this word Christian. Although critics are not agreed whether the Roman administration or the population of Antioch bestowed the new name on the followers of the Nazarene. The followers of the Nazarene. They all agree that the term was invented by non-Christians. It definitely wasn't created by the Israelites. That term Christian was not created by the Israelites. That's a fact. That is a fact. Let's go to page 800. If the Christians at Antioch coined the term with respect to the outside world, how should we understand the use of the name? It was hardly meant as a substitute for the individual appellation of a follower of Christ. So it's saying that word Christian was not meant as a substitute, right? Right, for the name, right, of a follower of the Messiah. Later, some martyrs, notice what it says, later, some martyrs to all question about their names, origin, and status gave one answer: Christianus sum. In other words, it goes on to say, but the earliest instance of this use is, so far as I know, from 177 AD, basically by the apologist Justin. For example, gives his status exactly in the beginning of his works. So here it's saying the earliest of that term, right? People calling themselves Christians, embracing this term, 177 AD by the apologist Justin. But I want to take you to the works of Josephus, because this is what many would roll to. This is what some would try to go to and say, hey, look, Josephus made mention of Christians. Well, let's see what Josephus says. Let's go to the works of Josephus. Let's see what it says here. Now, there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, and if it be lawful to call him a man, for if he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure, he drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the third day, as the divine prophet had foretold these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him. And the tribe of Christians, wait a minute. See, that's what they will pull on. The tribe of Christians. Wait a minute. Oh, Josephus made mention to the tribe of Christians. So named from him and are not extinct at this day. See, that's red flag number one. When did Christians be listed as a tribe? This right here, I can tell you just reading this is interpolation. This is the word interpolate comes from. All right. Josephus made mention of a tribe of Christians. Is this the earliest usage of the word Christian outside the Bible? Let's go to University of Charlotte, The Jewish Roman World of Jesus by Dr. James Tabor. Josephus on Jesus. Let's see what he says here. And this is important. The words in all caps are likely interpolations added by Christian copyists over the centuries in an attempt to make Josephus support faith in Jesus as the Christ. We have only 3 Greek manuscripts of this section of Josephus, all from the 11th century. So when you understand what he's saying here, because Josephus, he was an Israelite, but guess what? He did not follow the Messiah. He made mention of him, but not in the way that the Christians tried to interpolate his work to give that impression that Josephus was mentioning Christians, and that that's what this is saying right here. It's saying that the words in all caps are likely interpolations added by Christian copyists over the centuries in an attempt to make Josephus support the faith in Jesus as the Christ. We have only 3 Greek manuscripts of this section of Josephus, all from the 11th century. These phrases add rather clumsily, right? Think about it. What I just pointed out, tribe of Christians, that's clumsy. Appear to be rather obvious additions even to the modern reader in English. Once restored to its more original reading, Josephus offers us a more fascinating reference to Jesus. Indeed, it is the earliest reference to Jesus outside of the New Testament, and its rather matter-of-fact neutral reporting makes it all the more valuable to historians. But what's interesting about this article, notice what it says, right? This is giving what I just read, It says in this article, as you see, everything that's in caps, those are things that was added by the Christian church, the Christian/Catholic church, right? This particular writing is from the 11th century. So they added, if it would be lawful to call him a man. They added a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. Added both Jews of, you see all what they added here, right? I'm not going to read it all here. You guys get the gist of it. But Professor Shlomo Pines found a different version of Josephus' testimony in Arabic version, right, of the 10th century, 100 years prior to the Christian interpolated version. It says here, it has obviously not been interpolated in the same way as the Christian version circulating in the West, right? Now, this is what the word interpolate means. Insert something of a different nature into something else. The sub-entry, insert words in a book or other text, especially in order to give a false impression as to its date. See, they interpolated, added these phrases in there to try to give you the impression that, guess what? That these words were there at a latter date, right? Let me say that again. Insert words in a book or other text, especially in order to give a false impression as to its date. So let's go back to the source, right? This is that same passage from Josephus, from the Arabic version, translation of Josephus' works from the 10th century, 100 years prior. At this time, there was a wise man who was called Jesus, and his conduct was good, and he was known to be virtuous. And many people from among the Jews and other nations became his disciples. Oh, well, let me read that again. And many people from among the Jews and the other nations became his disciples. Pilate condemned him to be crucified and to die. And those who had become his disciples did not abandon their loyalty to him. They reported that he had appeared to them 3 days after his crucifixion and that he was alive. Accordingly, they believed that he was the Messiah concerning whom the prophets have recounted wonders. But notice, you don't see the tribe of Christians. You don't see that here. That's all interpolated. That's all interpolated. So the works of Josephus was interpolated. But we see the extreme additives, things that was added by the Christian/Catholic Church to try to promote a narrative, right? So we got to put things in its proper perspective. Let's continue on. I know I'm giving you a lot of information here. Let's continue on. So did Peter call himself a Christian? Let's go to 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 16. I'm going to show you that Peter did not call himself a Christian. Let me say it again. I'm going to show you guys that Peter did not call himself a Christian.
What?
Absolutely. He did not call himself a Christian. And for those that try to poorly teach this text, we got to give you a 3-piece. All right. Let's read verse 16. Yet if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify Elohim on this behalf. The key here to really pay attention to what's in this text, it says, yet if any man suffer as a, in other words, we want to deal with this this conjunction. Let's start with the Greek definition of as a, right? It means in that manner, after that, even as, in other words, like, in other words, as unto. Let's go to the Oxford Dictionary definition of this conjunction. Let's see what it says. Used in comparison to refer to the extent or degree of something. But when we go down and see the conjunction, right, portion of definition of it, when we see it here, it says, number one, it says used to indicate that something happens during the time when something is taking place. But here's the key. Number two, entry number two, used to indicate by comparison the way that something happens or is done. By comparison, it's not saying that it is, Peter's not saying be Christians or you are Christians. Here, indicate by comparison the way that something happens or is done. So as to is interchangeable with the word like, as we saw it. They're interchangeable, synonymous, right? So like means having the same characteristics or quality, like, similar, having the same form. So let's bring this back. Let's put it in its proper perspective. Peter is not telling the scattered, persecuted Israelites to be a Christian, but having the characteristics of that word Christian, Christianos, right? Remember what we said, slave of the Messiah or servant of the Messiah, because in the Roman times, guess what? Anyone that was considered a slave, they mocked, they humiliated them. They laughed at them. They ridiculed them, whether you was a slave of the Messiah or what, a slave of Caesar or just someone's slave. They ridiculed you. So Peter is not telling the scattered Israelites, right, the scattered persecuted Israelites to be a Christian, but having the characteristics of a Christian. Peter uses this conjunction as in the entire block, or in the previous verse. That's excuse the typo. So Peter uses this conjunction as in the previous verse, the previous block of text. Let me prove it to you, but we're going to build it up. Let's start at verse 12. Give you proper clarity. See, when people pull this out on you, read the entire context so you understand what Peter is saying. He's not saying be a Christian. He's using the characteristics. So let's start with verse 12. Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial, which is to try you. So he's dealing with his Israelite brothers and sisters who are being persecuted. Just like this starts off similar to, or has the same overtone to James, right? When he wrote his letters to the scattered Israelites, when he said, count it all joy as you go through diverse temptations. So here, beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial, which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. But rejoice inasmuch as ye are partakers of the Messiah's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. Oh man, verse 14, if ye be reproached for the name, in other words, the reputation, the way of the Messiah, happy are ye, for the spirit of glory, the spirit of kabod, rawak kabod, the spirit of glory and of Alahayim resteth upon you. On their part, he is evil spoken of, right? On their part, the Messiah is evil spoken on, but on your part, he is glorified. Verse 15, this is the kicker right here. Notice what you see here. But let none of you suffer as a murderer. Notice what you see here. Or as a thief, or as an evildoer, or as a busybody. In other words, being all up in people's business and other men's matter. So notice but let none of you suffer in the characteristics of a murderer, the reputation of a murderer, the reputation of a thief, the characteristics of a thief, the characteristics of an evildoer, the reputation of an evildoer, the reputation of a busybody. In other words, people gossiping all up in other people's business. Then when we get to verse 16, yet if any man suffer as a Christian, in other words, the characteristics of being what? A slave to the Messiah. Let him be not ashamed, but let him be glorified. In other words, if you're ridiculed by being called a slave or, a slave to the Messiah, let him not be ashamed, but let him be glorified Let him glorify Elohim on this behalf and saying that that's right. I am a servant of the Messiah. But this is not him saying, go out here and call yourself a Christian. He says, suffer as a, in other words, the characteristics. So the proper clarity, let none of you suffer in the character or in the reputation of a murderer, a thief, an evildoer, or in the reputation of being a meddling in other people's business. That's what it really means. That's the clarity. If any of you suffer in the character or in the reputation as a slave to the Messiah, abad or abadah, slave, servant to the Messiah, but not from a chattel perspective. Not what we come to understand of being stolen. Don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed when they ridicule you with this. This is not going out there promoting themselves saying we're Christians. Just saying, don't let it get up under your skin. That's what he's telling them. Don't be ashamed. Don't let it get up under your skin. So the Hebrew definition, I didn't put it up here. But anyway, I thought I had it up here. My apologies, family. Man, we covered a lot here, family. I know we did a lot here, but let me touch on a little bit more. I'm in geek mode now. All right. Let me touch on more. I don't believe in God. I want to deal with a key prophecy to set up part 2. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. I want to start with these key prophecies here. And I stood upon the sea of the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name blasphemy. So, family, when you see, for example, 7 heads, right? We also see 10 horns. We know those are significant, right? When you see the number 7, for example, we know that that's the Zion, and it means weapon, right? But then we see 10. We also know that means union, but also the Yod, right? It means redemption, right? Upon his horns, 10 crowns, and upon his heads, the name of blasphemy. The 10 crowns, in other words, the leaders of these 10 places, right? We can also tie this into Judaism, the 10 Sephirah, right? The Ein Sof, but let's keep it simple. And upon his horns, 10 crowns, and upon his heads, the name, in other words, Sham, the reputation of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear. Notice we see the same terms, as the feet of a bear, like unto the leopard. Not saying it is a leopard, but the characteristics, as the feet of the bear. Not saying it is the feet of the bear, but the characteristics. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion. Not saying it is the lion, but the mouth of a lion, the characteristics. So we're going to break down the mouth of a lion. Let's break this down. Upon his head, the name blasphemy, the reputation of blasphemy. The Hebrew definition of name, as we talked about this a number of times, it could be a literal name, as you see, mark or memorial of individuality, but also it means honor, authority, character, fame, infamous, renown, report. It also means, as you see at the bottom here, it's real tiny, reputation, right? So again, it's interchangeable with the word glory, kabod. So name, Sham, means, right, distinct, right? It means a distinct literal title, but also it means honor, authority, character, fame, reputation. The word blasphemy, right? It means to scorn, contemn, despise, provoke. Okay, so the key understanding this word blasphemy, not atazah, someone saying not ats, but it means to scorn, despise, also profane when speaking of Yah or the things he deemed sacred. See, blasphemy is more than just blasphemy against the profaning of the Holy Spirit. It's anything that the Most High set aside to be holy, including his holy people. So let's go to Revelation, right? Let's highlight verse 2 again. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. His feet was as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. right? So the mouth as the mouth of a lion. Facts. This is coming from England's englandforever.org, right? Let's deal with the national animal of England, right? We see here the lion, because the lion is symbolic of bravery. So when we deal with England, we deal with the UK or whatever, we dealing with Britain or whatever, this is their symbol. This is their national animal, because the lion is symbolic of bravery. It was frequently used to depict the courageous warrior of medieval England. Today, it remains the national animal of the country and is used extensively in sports, team names, logo icons, and so on. So the lion is the symbol of the UK. And as I pointed out, Britain as well. But here's the key prophecy, Daniel chapter 7, verse 4, right? This is what it says. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man. And a man's heart was given to it. So lion, like a lion, and had eagle's wings, till the wings were plucked, made to stand upon the feet as a man. Guess what? That's the birth of the United States. Now, we could deal with some other teachings about what others have taught about this, but I'm not going to put that in here in this lesson, because this lesson would be much larger. But I'll deal with that prophecy, that some of the other things that many would teach. But you can see here the birth of the United States, the separation of the United States from Great Britain, the Revolutionary War, right? The eagles separating from the lion, made to stand as a man, Uncle Sam, the birth of the United States. So the primary language of Great Britain is the English language. That's the primary language of the United States and around the world, right? Other countries, right? You have to learn English. It's one of the hardest languages to learn in the world. So let's go to Revelation chapter 13, verse 7. Let's deal with this key prophecy. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, actually the holy people of the Most High, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds. Shabbat, right? Not Shabbath, Shabbat, kindreds. Shabbath is the day of rest. Shabbat, kindreds, tongues, Lashan, and nations, Gawayam, or well, actually, I just said it. Someone say Goyim, right? So power was given him all over kindreds and tongues. We put it in this proper perspective. This prophecy is dealing with Israel. See, the Roman Catholic Church, right, along with Christianity, has made it so that way we look at the prophecies through the lens of the oppressor. We add them to this side of judgment, right? I want to say shalom to my cousin, Bishop Brown, who is in the building. Appreciate him for tuning in. And so let's break this down here. Power was given him over all kindreds and tongues. So this is dealing with the Israelites. This is not dealing with the Confederates and those that have enslaved Israel. So the serpent, Nakash, gave this beast power over all kindreds and tongues. And if you want to get a proper understanding of what this means from a Hebraic school of thought, go to Genesis chapter 10. And it'll show you that each one of Noah's sons were given land, family, and tongues. And guess what? They sliced up, divided themselves accordingly. So the serpent gave the beast power over all kindred and tongues. So how important is it for Israel to speak their native language? How important is it? Let's go to Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 23 and 24. It says this. In those days, also saw I Judeans that had married wives of Ashad, Ammon, and of Moab, and their children spake half in speech of Ashad and could not speak in the Judeans' language or Judeans' language, but according to the language of each people. See, the children could not speak Hebrew. They could not speak their native tongue. The men were not teaching the women or making it a point to make sure that they learned the language of their fathers. So all they knew was the language of their mothers, right? And so Nehemiah had to use a translator to speak to the people. So this meant that the children would not be able to read and understand the law for themselves. Unless the situation could be corrected, the compromise of mixed marriages would only grow. So eventually, a whole generation of children would not speak Hebrew, which meant that they would be ignorant of Yahweh's word and of the laws that were to govern Israel. So Judah began to marry the daughters of the Confederate who made a promise to destroy them. I'm not going to get into that text there, but if you go to, I believe it's the 83rd book of Psalms, you'll see the Confederate. It lists all the tribes there. You'll see Moab, you'll see Ammon. So let me highlight this here as we wrap up, and we'll save the rest for part 2. The key to understanding the Great Tribulation starts with identifying the afflicted. Let me say that again. The key to understanding the Great Tribulation starts with identifying the afflicted. It starts with understanding how they were marked. Let's go to Revelation, back to Revelation chapter 13. There's so many nuggets here. Verse 7. So we already know the English language is the lips that we see that's highlighted here, right? The lips of the lion, because that's why I said the mouth of the lion. So we're dealing with the English language. But let's go to verse 17 and let's tie this all in. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Sounds similar to the playbook with the Babylonians when we start dealing with the 3 Hebrew young men. Verse 16, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. Verse 17, and that no man might buy or sell save he had that, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Y'all better pay attention to this, right? The mark or the name, in other words, the reputation. Remember, reputation, Hasham, of the beast, reputation, or the number of his name. There we have it again, number of his name, the reputation. Okay, let's bring this all together. Let's give proper clarity. Verse 18, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. It says, let them have what? Understanding, family. We have to get proper understanding of this here. But let me break it down for you. It goes on to say, and his number is 600, 6. It's right in front of us. See, the Jewish community, as we know them, when we start dealing with their doctrine, 6 million is the number that they operate in. Right? That they hold to so much value. Right? Remember, we did a lesson on this. When you start dealing with the different things that they had to deal with, any type of event that they highlight, 6 million will always be the number. They were promoting the number 6 million well before the Holocaust. So when we understand 6, right? As you see here, for it is the number of a man. Well, guess what? On the 6th day, right? On the 6th day of creation, that's the day that man was created. On the 6th day. So when we start understanding that, when we're dealing with the 666 or 600, 6, we're dealing with what? The system of man. So you're dealing with, going back to the previous verse, right? Or the number of his name, right? Also, we see here the reputation of this beast, the reputation of this system. All right. So the Greek definition of marked, let's pull it up here, right? Character, right? It means a graver, right? Engraving, in other words, character. The figure stamped, representation, express image. In the sub entry of entry number 2, I highlighted this here. It says a mark or figure burned in or stamped on an impression. And it gives Leviticus 13:28. But I'm going to take this even further, because we're not just dealing with tattoos, even though we see a lot of tattoos going on nowadays. So many people are putting tattoos on them, right, that they don't really understand what they mean. So when we're dealing with the mark of the beast, guess what? It's more than just one thing. But I'm going to show you that we're going to start identifying, we're going to use the marks that they already started doing towards our people well before where we are today. They've been doing these marks. But I'm going to show you how these marks identify who we are with scripture, with text, with history. But let's go to Revelation chapter 1, verse 8. I'm going to use this here. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith Adonai Yah, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. So I am Alpha. Now let me make it clear to you guys. We have to understand Hebrew. The Messiah, or the Most High, giving these messages to the Apostle John, right? He's not speaking to him in Greek. He's speaking to him in his Hebrew language. So instead, it will not say, I am Alpha, Ahia, right? Ahia Alap, right? That's what it will say. I am Alap, Ahia Alap, right? This first letter means, right, the numerical value, number 1, but it means leader, strength, power. It also means teach. So the Aleph, or Alap, is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. As the first letter, it would naturally be referenced to the Most High, Yah, or Yahweh. In ancient Hebrew, an ox head, and this is what we're dealing with the ox as far as the ancient Hebrew, also the pictograph. Head represents this letter, which represents strong or strength, power, leader, teach. So this letter, Alap, expresses the oneness of our Elohim. It teaches the unity of our Elohim, right? When we deal with deal with Yahweh Elohim, in other words, or Abba Elohim. When we deal with Ban Elohim, which is his son, and Rawak Elohim, which is the Holy Spirit. So the Alap is also the first letter of the alphabet. So it reminds us of beginnings. Alap is the key letter of the Hebrew alphabets, right? So when we understand this, the Most High is not simply saying that he is the beginning, because guess what? There's no beginning to the Most High. There's no ending to the Most High. But let me put this in proper perspective so you understand how to properly identify the people who are being afflicted during the Great Tribulation. See, in modern Hebrew, the or the Alap is silent, Dama, right? Notice here, I just use this as a source, right? Ancient Hebrew or student grammar. You see the Ayin and you see the Aleph. Both of those letters are silent. The Ayin means watch. The Alap, you already know what it means. It represents the Most High. In ancient Hebrew, all the letters, guess what, had the sound associated with them. Every letter was treated as a syllable. So the Hebrew definition of silent, let's see what it means. Dama, let's see what it means. It says here, to be dumb, to stop, to perish, cease, be cut down or cut off, right? So silent, dama, means to be dumb, to stop, perish, cease. So there is an all-out assault to silence the alap, silence the ah. I did a full teaching on this, right? Teaching on Matthew's chapter 5. Not going to teach that portion of it here. We'll do it again. But there's an all-out assault to silence the Most High, right? To silence the ah, to silence the alap. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 4 says, thou shalt not muzzle kasab, the ox, shawar, when he treadeth out the corn. See, tread out, dayash, means to judge. So this law prevents muzzling kasam, an ox, while working. See, when you start cutting off these hairs, as the Messiah pointed out, when he said, think not that I come to destroy the law and the prophets, he made it clear, not one jot, not one tittle. What that means is jot. What he's saying is jot, right? Iota, right? When he's saying one iota, right? That eighth letter of the Greek alphabets come from the 10th letter, which is the yod, which means redemption. He says not one jot. In other words, don't you even touch the yod. Don't even touch the yod. Because you start playing around with the yod, guess what you do? You even mess around with the Most High's name. Right? Don't even mess around with the yod, but also he says, don't touch tittle, right? Karas, right? In Greek, it means hairs. So he says, don't even touch the hairs or horns. So as you see, the Hebrew letters looks like they have hairs and horns. So he says, don't even touch the hairs or the horns, because you cut these letters off, it can't defend itself. You cut the horns off the ox. The ox cannot defend himself. And we can see that the yod, which means redemption, has a haircut, which is called yod in the Israeli language. So this law prevents muzzling an ox while it's working. So in a nutshell, guess what? You change these letters, you begin to change what redemption is. That's what we see happening right now. So an ox was often used to trample dayash across the threshing floor in order to separate the ears of grain from the stalk. So silencing the alap, that's the ancient pronunciation of it, and treading the corn is an attempt to stop, change, or modify the judgment, to change the Most High's commandments, which we see today. So we have to allow Yah's alap to silence Dama, the inner chatter that we have in our hearts, to try to do our own thing, to profane his name, his literal name and reputation. So that way we won't silence Yah, silence him, Yahweh. So we also see Omega. So we say Alpha and Omega. Let's deal with Omega, right? Let's deal with this. So this quote is actually, and I want to make it clear, when it says Alpha and Omega, actually it's the Ah and the Tha. Those two letters come together to form the word sign, Ath. So this quote is actually referring to signs. What the Most High is saying in that text is that all signs come from him. That's what it actually means, not what we made it out to be. Oh, let's break this down more. Let's break this down. Family, this is why I'm not compromising. I'm going to stand. I'm not going to compromise. So whether people want to follow me or not, I'm not compromising. I'm not going to call myself a Christian. I'm not going to use the word God anymore. I'm not doing any of those things. I'm going to stand on here because guess what? I understand the signs now. I understand the system of the beast, this system of man, the system of these Confederates that enslaved us. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not compromising. If those that are teaching contrary to this want to teach that, so be it. But I'm not going to compromise and bite my tongue, muzzle myself, because I don't want anyone to get the impression that I'm trying to sneak this or whatever they call it towards others, which I'm not. I'm teaching exactly what the word says and what I stand for. And I'm going to continue to stand on these principles. So the Hebrew definition of sign, as you see here, oath. Right now, you see here it said oath, and we're going to deal with this not tonight on the colon va. I'll deal with that another time. But nevertheless, it says here, right? And notice they silence the ah, and now you're pronouncing the mark. Oh, we about to get there. We're going to get there. But sign, oath, it means a signal, evidence, mark, miracle, proof. Let me say that again. A signal, evidence, mark, miracle, proof. That's the last letter of the Hebrew alphabets. Tha. It means evidence. It means proof. The ah and the tha. Interesting, right? The tha numerical value is 400. And the Allah number numerical value is 1. Together is 401 years. Anyway, 401. I say years, right? Not trying to get too deep with it. All right. But a sign, is distinct and uniquely recognizable. There's only one source of all signs, and that's what the text is actually telling you from a Hebraic school of thought. So if we go to Exodus chapter 4, verse 1 and 2, and also verse 8, it makes it clear. It says, and Mashah, Moses, declared or answered and said, behold, they will not believe Amanyan or Aman, right? They will not believe me, nor hearken, Shammai, listen with intelligence unto my voice. For they will say, Yahweh hath not appeared unto thee. And Yahweh said unto him, what is that in thine hand? Yod. And he said, a rod. Whoa, wait a minute. Understand this, family. That rod represents his identity. Moses is carrying his rod because that's part of his identity. When you understand what a shepherd, David had a rod, he had bracelets, he had a signet that represented his identity. When you see Judah sold out his identity, gave up his identity for a moment of pleasure. So Yahweh said unto him, what is that in thy hand? And Moses didn't understand the fullness. Like, wait a minute. He just said it's a rod. The Most High is like, wait a minute. Come on, Moses. You know it's more than just a rod. This is your identity. This is what identify you as to being you. This is why David said to King Saul, I can't use this armor, this weapons that you're giving me because it's not proven, it's not tested. So he got his shepherd's bag, put his stones from the creek, the smooth stones, 5 smooth stones to his shepherd's bag. Family, that's what this actually means. The first sign Moses was given was his staff to show that when he presented his identity to the Egyptians, first to the Israelites first, then to the Egyptians, guess what? His identity trumps the identity that the Egyptians was trying to put on the Israelites. Anyway, let me break this down. All right. So in Yahweh said unto him, what is that in thine hand? Right. And remember the second sign, guess what, was the skin complexion. It's not about the skin complexion, right? We hear that all the time. The second sign was the skin complexion. Interesting, right? When we get to chapter 1 of Revelation, Gamal, right? Or some would say, not Gamal, Gala, right? When we get to there, which means reveal, we see the same sign. We see the skin complexion used as the sign. And notice what it says here. And this is what he said about the second sign, right? And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. But guys, there's a judgment. I didn't put it up here. If you see here, verse 9, it gives the curse. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe also these two signs, neither hearken unto your voice, that you shall take of the water of the river and pour it upon the dry land, and the water which you take out of the river shall become blood upon the dry land. In other words, the Most High said he's gonna bring famine. He's gonna bring judgment to those that reject these signs. The signs of what? That points to who we are. Anyway. So the sign Ath were given to Moses, Masha, directly from Yah. So Moses, Masha, was given signs, Ath, from Yahweh to show and prove his authority to Israel, who had never experienced his power. See, they knew his literal name, but they really, as a community, as a whole, did not experience the reputation behind it. So the key to the Hebrew word signs, let's deal with the key to here, right? Remember, the first letter, Ath or Alap, it means leader, strength, power. It means teach. Tha, sign, mark, evidence. So when you understand the word sign, right, just the letters itself explains it, right? We'll understand who the Most High is, that he will lead us. He will give us the strength. He will give us the power, the authority, right? He'll give us the sign. He'll give us the mark. He will give us the proof. He will give us the evidence, which we see happening right now. So silencing Dhamma, the Alap, will allow the changing of the associated signs. And that's what we're seeing right now. See, in modern Hebrew, you are never pronouncing the actual Alap, but you are actually pronouncing the mark, the speckle, the mark of man. That's what it means. When you see this word down here, naquad, that's not a natural mark. This naquad is not a natural mark, and I'm going to prove it to you, just to give you guys a proper understanding. See, if anyone who's teaching about the marks, they have to start off by understanding and teaching from the language. You cannot start with the Greek. You cannot start with the English. It's great to try to get some type of understanding, but to get the proper accurate understanding of these signs, you have to get into the Hebrew language. I'm not saying you have to master the language, but you should at least be able to go into the language and extract out what the Most High wants you to understand. So in modern Hebrew, you are never pronouncing the alap, but you are actually pronouncing the speckle, right? The naquad. So let me show you the Hebrew definition of speckle. We dealt with the Greek, but let me show you what it actually means, because in the Greek, we see that it's not a natural mark. It's a stamp, right, of signs or letters, image. So here's the Hebrew definition of speckle, naquad. Let's see what it says. It says, from an unused root meaning, but notice what it says, to mark by puncturing or branding. I hope y'all grab hold of this. To mark by puncturing or branding. So let's go to Genesis chapter 30, verse 32. Let's get a proper understanding of what naquad, or in the Israeli language, is pronounced nikud. Let's see what it says. And I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from hence all the speckled, naquad, and spotted, talah. Now guess what this means? See, Jacob had to put a manufactured mark on animals, his cattle, that did not have natural marks, right? The spotted were those that had natural marks, but the speckled, right? Those are marks. He branded those animals to show that those animals belong to him. So it says, I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled, naquad, and spotted, talah. So again, speckled, that's not natural. Those are branded marks. That's why you see naquad branded. So when you hear the term nikud, right, for the Hebrew language, that's telling you that these are not natural marks. These are marks of men. These are marks that represents a system. So when you say Elohim versus Allahayam, you are not pronouncing the Most High's name. You are pronouncing the marks of men. All right. So these are the key letters in Hebrew, right? The Aleph Bayath, some would say Aleph Beth, but Aleph Bayath, that were branded. Let me give you some key letters, starting with the very first one, Aleph, right? This letter means leadership, strength, power, teach. The Ha, notice what this letter means, right? Remember, Gala, right? Transliteration in the Israeli language is pronounced Gala. It means to reveal, uncover, open. It means revelation. Ha, you see the pictograph with the arms lifted up, showing that we will not, when the Most High give us that revelation, we will not be a threat to what he gives us. That's why you see the arms lifted up, right? That's why you see when police arrest people, they tell them to put their arms in a position that they can see it, that they're not what? A threat. So this is the fifth letter. This is another letter that has been modified. And the Israeli language, sometimes it's used as a vowel letter. This is where you get into what is called matrix lectionis. All right. The Wa, the sixth number, the sixth letter of the Aleph Bayath. The numerical value is 6, but it means tent, peg, hook, secure. There's the pictograph right there. You can use it as a hook to fish, but also a hook to secure a tent. That's why it says tent peg. You'll put the rope here to secure the tent, right? That rope represents hope. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all of that. Then you have the Yod, right? The Yod, the 10th letter, hand, arm, redemption. Here's the pictograph, right? You cut these letters off, you're changing what redemption means. Now you're trying to remove the hands, the arm of the Most High, and you're trying to put some other arms there, whether it's their arms of a man or the arms of what? Whoever they believe in. That's why when you start dealing with the police, they say, what? You cannot outrun with the arms of the law? No, guess what? The Most High, even the arms of the legal system is too short to box with our Most High. All right. Let's go to another letter. The Ayan, right? Means eye, sight, watch. Numerical value is 70. Think about the 70 elders. They had to watch. That was their responsibilities. They were filled with the Holy Spirit, right? There you see the pictograph, the eye. Then we have the Pa, right? Mind, mouth, instructions, command. Numerical value is 80. Man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of Yah, so man will live. That's Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. Paul said, let this mind be in you that is in the Messiah. Let this mind. What he's saying is, let the words that come out of your mouth be in alignment with the words that came out of the Messiah's mouth. And the Messiah always quoted and spoke the words of his Father. He quoted out of what? The law and the prophets. That's the pictograph, lips, right? The Shan, right? In this Israeli language, right? Depending on the placement of the dot, if it's to the right, it'll be pronounced sheen. If it's on the left, it'll be pronounced seen. But the numerical value is 300. It means teeth, tool, right? And that's the pictograph right there, right? So not only were key letters branded, not quad, but also the people connected to the letters and their language, Lashan, were branded. See, they branded our language, but guess what? They also branded our people. Come on, family. Let's see what they did to our people. The captives were about to embark on the infamous Middle Passage, so called because it was the middle leg of the three-part voyage, a voyage that began and ended in Europe. The first leg of the voyage carried a cargo that often included iron, cloth, brandy, firearms, and gunpowder. Upon landing on Africa's slave coast, the cargo was exchanged for Africans, fully loaded with its human cargo. The ship set sail for the Americas, where the slaves were exchanged for sugar, tobacco, or some other product. The final leg brought the ship back to Europe. This is dealing with our people. It goes on to say the slaves were branded with hot irons. Wait a minute. What does it say? The slaves were branded with hot irons and restrained with shackles. Come on, family. The history is right here in front of us. It's right in front of us. To my brother Ernest Higgs, to answer your question, we say here, so these marks came about in the Hebrew language from the Babylonian captivity when the scribes began to add vowel points, correct? Now, actually, these vowel points come from the Masoretes, right? And I'm going to do a separate teaching on that when we deal with the Masoretic points, which is called the Nikud, but then we'll deal with the Quran text as well. I'll deal with that as well to kind of talk about that as well, because we'll deal with marks and we'll deal with interpolations, and we'll deal with what is called the matrix lectionis, that is dealing with using vowel letters. So we'll deal with that. But that's a great question. Great question. We'll deal with that. Appreciate your question. All right. So look at what they were branded with. If you understand, in the 10th century, right, the Pope decided to use what is called the lotus flower. This is an Egyptian symbol. Decided to use this to represent the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and began to what? Branding our people, which the law talks about, telling us not to put marks on our skin. Not just tattoos, but marks, branding. We're not supposed to do this. But the reason why they use this is because, guess what? The petals, depending on what symbols you have, but their symbol, it looked like 3 6s. But it represents the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit to them. And they took this mark and branded our ancestors. You see this mark all around you. You see it in the church. You see it in all kinds of art. You see it on shoes. You see it on clothing. You see it on your fence. You see this mark all around. The New Orleans Saints, right? So slaves were also branded, not quad, if they made any attempt to escape. This is coming from the Code Noir or the Black Codes. I have other sources, because with that fleur-de-lis, they used to do all kinds of things with that fleur-de-lis. Brandon, cut the hamstrings, excuse me, I said hamstrings. The hamstrings, castrate, cut the ears. They used to also slit the nose of slaves, slit their nose, put marks on their face, and then put their face over fire, so that way it could further mutilate them. But this is coming from the Code Noir. Article number 2 makes it imperative on masters to impart religious instructions to their slaves. Article 3 permits the exercise of the Roman Catholic creed only. Every other mode of worship is prohibited. Article number 4, Negroes placed under the discretion or supervision of any other person than a Catholic are liable to confiscation. Article number 5, Sundays and holidays are to be strictly observed. All Negroes found at work on these days are to be confiscated. The offender shall be branded with the mark of the fleur-de-lis, and should be aggravating circumstances, capital punishment may be applied at the discretion of our judge. Do you know that the Christian church, the Christian Catholic Church, do you know what they were doing to our ancestors, especially when you start studying the Spanish Inquisition? Do you know that they forced them to eat pork? Do you know that for those that wanted to become a Christian, convert over to Christian, they had to prove themselves to this system, to these priests, by eating pork, no longer honoring the Shabbat, but honoring the first day as the Shabbat, which in the Catholic doctrine makes it clear that that's of their doings, not of the biblical text. Because remember, Isaiah chapter 53, the 53 or 56, it makes it clear that all those that are not blood descendants of Israel, if they want to do the things that pleases the Most High, start by honoring the Shabbat and taking hold of his covenant, which within it, we'll see the law, statutes, we'll see the commandments. We'll see, just when we deal with the Ark of the Covenant, we see 10 commandments right there. That was inside the ark that represented the presence of the Most High. You take those commandments out, you take that covenant out, then you just have an empty box, because you cannot have a covenant without the agreement. So they were forcing our ancestors. We're going to deal with that, not in this lesson. We'll deal with it when we deal with the God's portion of it. But I wanted to just take the time out here. We'll deal with that one later on this week. So mark it on your calendar. All right. So let's take this back. Right. So let's bring these letters up. Right. This is the Ath. Right. Remember, leadership, strength, power, teach, sign, mark, evidence. Right. This is what Ath will teach. But let's modify this a little bit. Let me add another letter, the Ha, which means reveal. So Atha, guess what this means? This means you. This transliterates to thee. This transliterates to thou. Right? So guess what? These signs are for us. Moses asked for signs, not for the Egyptians, not for all the other nations. He asked for these signs to start with his people, his own people. Before he even dealt with the Egyptians, he needed to deal with his own people. These signs are for those that what? Don't believe. So these signs will for those that do believe, to show to the non-believing Israelites, to show them to embrace the things of the Most High. So Ath, sign, Atha, you. Right? So who are the signs created for? I just gave you the answer. Let's look it up here. We see Atah, but in ancient Hebrew is Atha. Notice what it says: thou, thee, plural, ye, and you. Right? So the sign Atha, or the signs Ath, were created for you. Oh my gosh, man. This is, man, I'm happy, man. I'm just ready to praise the Most High from here. We're going to stop right here. We're going to stop right here. We're going to stop right here. I got to get up in the morning as well. My buddy Jay Highstyle. I know I went pretty lengthy. I'm not going to open up the lesson here because I know we all got to get up early here. So that's right. Up next, they did this in the Maccabees, right? When the Greeks did the same thing in the Maccabees, right? Trying to force the Israelites to not do the circumcision, to eat pork, all the things that will profane us in the eyes of the Most High, not to honor the Shabbat, right? So, yeah, absolutely. Maccabees, right? Also means what? Affliction. Maccabee means affliction. So that was also a time of afflictions during that time of sorrow, the Maccabean period. So appreciate you, family. I know we gave a lot of information tonight. I encourage you guys to go back over, review this lesson. Again, this is an extension of what I taught a few days ago. So in my closing here, let's throw out any false doctrines. Let's give a 3-piece. All right. Let's give it a couple more things. As we continue to knock out the deceptions that surround us.
It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over!
So family, I really appreciate you guys. We're going to go ahead and wrap up and go back over, watch the presentation to get clarity. Right. And again, purposely did this so that way you understand exactly what I teach, what I stand for, according to the Holy Dabar HaQuadash. right? According to the Dabar HaKodesh, the holy word. So with that being said, family, I encourage you guys to have a blessed night. As Moses said to the people in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, you will never have to see them again. You will never have to deal with them again. They will not have power over you again. Those strongholds, those devices, those stumbling blocks will not have power over you again. The Most High will fight for you, but you have to hold your peace. Can't go back, can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.